Welcome, awesome leaders, to day 9 and the first of our leader learnings installment. So, for the next 10 weeks, the remainder of the Future Leadership Leader Blueprint, what we'll be doing on every Thursday, we'll be sharing with you a brief bio of an awesome leader, an influential leader, be it either past or present. And we'll be looking at, in particularly, what we can take away from what they've done and the journey that they've partaken in up until this point or throughout their lives. We'll not extrapolate, but we'll extract a key learning, and then from that, after the lesson's concluded, we'll be applying that to our own journeys and taking away some of those key points and looking to see if we can learn from their journey and perhaps some of their mistakes or perhaps some of their key wins. So this week, the very first of our Leader Learnings installments, we'll be looking at the life of Richard Branson, which I'm sure we're all very familiar with, or we're familiar of the name anyway. After today's lesson, you will have a good understanding of the key moments of Sir Richard Branson's life and one of the big takeaways we can learn from his leadership career thus far, and how we can apply what he learned to our own journeys and subsequently benefit from it. Because that's essentially what we're always doing and what we always should be looking out to do. Look at the people that have done it the best. Look at the leaders that have been the most inspiring. What is it that they've done that's allowed them to be that way? Now, for the most part, the Future Leader Blueprint and the Leadership Through Lifestyle program that we've created runs on this very notion, taking the key core habits and learnings from people well before us and applying them within a concise program that allows you to benefit from all those lessons that have come before us. So, before we get into it, what do you know? Tell me one thing, write down one thing that stands out for you or that you know about Sir Richard Branson. Now, regardless of whether or not you know much about him or a little bit about him, I'm sure we've all heard of him before and can write down something. Write it down in your notepad. Share it on your Facebook group page. Don't feel bad if you don't know anything overly that extensively about him, because we're going to share a little bit more information now and you'll get a greater understanding of it. All right, with that being said, let's have a look. So early on, Richard Branson's early days, there's a picture of him as a youngster. He was born on the 18th of July in 1950 in Surrey, England. And funnily enough, he really struggled at school. He had dyslexia, among other things, and thus dropped out of high school at age 16 to start his own business. He wanted to start a student magazine. Now, if you haven't already, I've read a number of Richard Branson's books, and he talks explicitly about this period in his life. And it's absolutely phenomenal, the foresight that he had, even at that young age. I recall one of his anecdotes in the book saying when he dropped out of school, he wrote a letter to the principal. He's still on good terms with this principal up until this day, but formally requested to leave the school, like a letter of resignation almost. He was sort of well beyond his years. So it wasn't just simply a case of dropping out. It was a case of he felt he could offer more by dropping out than what he would if he'd stayed on. So when he dropped out at the age of 16, he started his own student magazine. And it was a student magazine run by students for students. And within that very first edition, he managed to conjure up $8,000 worth of advertising funds. This is in 1966, the very first edition. And 50,000 copies were produced and first run. And they were all given out for free. So he basically produced this magazine and created this business that virtually funded itself. And he was able to give these magazines out to the students on articles, etc., that were made by the students. And it was tackling all the issues that students faced around that time. In 1969, he started a mail order record company, Virgin Records, to fund the magazine. And this allowed him to expand his operation. He evidently then went on to put a record shop on Oxford Street. And this is it here, the Virgin. Well, this was what it came to be in the future, the Virgin Megastore. It allowed him to fund the magazine. So this was on Oxford Street, London, so right in the heart of London. And due to its success, he went on to build a recording studio in Oxfordshire in 1972. And Branson signed some really top artists such as the Sex Pistols, the Rolling Stones, Genesis, all to Virgin Music, making it one of the top 6 record companies in the world at that given point in time. And you think about this is from a 16-year-old high school dropout. Absolutely phenomenal, the way that entrepreneurial spirit and that leadership that he had in himself was able to develop and flourish, and the opportunities that he saw. Now, regardless of whether or not you're an entrepreneur or you're working for a company and you've got a grand vision, each one of those scenarios you'll have a vision and there's opportunities that present themselves. You still need to be able to inspire people, and that belief in your mission is going to determine the ultimate success of it. So seizing opportunities comes down as a hallmark trait to all great leaders. Expansion was still in the air. And in the 1980s, he took to the sky. He took on a travel company named Voyage Group in 1980 and formed Virgin Atlantic in 1984. And the Virgin Megastores began popping up in and around the same time. So the Virgin Megastore that was on the previous slide, they started popping up all over the place. By 1992, Virgin was actually struggling to stay afloat. So it sold the Virgin Records side of things, the Virgin Megastores, to Thorn EMI for $1 billion. Now, Richard Branson was absolutely shattered about this. This was his baby. He wanted to stay in the music industry, so he started Virgin Radio in 1993 and a second record company, which evidently even signed U2 in 1996. Oh no, sorry, didn't sign U2. The record company name was V2 in 1996, and this included artists such as Tom Jones and Powderfinger. His Virgin Atlantic days, they weren't all smooth sailing, but he saw an opportunity in the market to create a travel route from London to New York. And in one of his most recent books, The Virgin Way, which I just recently read, he talks about what he had to do to make that become a success and the opportunities that he jumped on to get free marketing, to the point where he was with British Airways. He was in a bit of a tussle with British Airways, and they labelled him a pirate for some reason. So as an advertising stunt, he managed to get the dimensions of the tail fin of the British Airways plane and create a big sticker with Virgin on it and placed it over the British Airways plane before anyone could recognise. And the amount of media that he got for that and free advertising really propelled his Virgin Airlines up into the stratosphere, to the point where now Virgin Airlines operates in the majority of places throughout the world, be it England, America, and Australia. It's phenomenal, the opportunities that he saw and seized upon. Of more recent times, he formulated Virgin Galactic, so to space and beyond. Branson's Virgin Group now holds more than 200 companies in more than 30 countries within the world, including industries such as trains, mobile phones, health clubs, space tourism, as with Virgin Galactic on the screen. It's phenomenal how far-reaching the Virgin brand is. But the essence of what he offers and that underlying fundamental message always remains the same. And the branding is so strong. He's become an icon for all things fun, but good quality and great customer service, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on. Of other highlights within his career, he was always pushing the limits. In 1999, he was knighted for his contribution to entrepreneurship. He holds a number of records, namely for this one up on the screen now was achieved in 1987 when he first crossed the Atlantic in a hot air balloon. And then he did a similar thing, but crossing over the Pacific this time in 1991. He's got a net worth, as it currently stands, of $5.1 billion in 2015. There's just an unwavering sense of resilience about what he does, but fun in what he does. One of his quintessential quotes was, "Screw it, let's do it." And that was in relation to getting into the aviation industry. There was a little bit of uncertainty as to how they'd go, but he just went with it and threw his hat in the ring. And it's that success and that daring and that preparedness to push the limits has really propelled him into great heights and onto other great things, but not obviously all successful. There's an underlying sense of resilience there, and that's something that all leaders need to possess in some capacity or another, because we're not always going to get it right. And so Richard Branson would be the first one to concede that. Not all his ventures have been successful, but there's a lot that have been, and he learns through experience. The biggest takeaway that I've drawn from Richard Branson, and the thing that I want us to focus on, and that the task today will focus on in particular, is his perception on his staff and the way that he manages and deals with his staff and his team. The quote that's up on the screen now: "Learn to look after your staff first, and the rest will follow." He's also been quoted as saying that train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. And if you look after your staff, they'll look after your customers. It's that simple. So be it you're at the head of a company or you're part of a company and you're part of a team, if you can adopt the essence of what Richard Branson has instilled in Virgin through this fashion, and that respect for staff and your respect for your fellow team and looking after them, it cultivates a culture where the service and the product that's distributed and seen by the customers is second to none. So the question I'd like you to ask yourselves is, what's your legacy going to be? How do you want to be remembered by your team and your colleagues? Think about that. How do we think the people at Virgin would think of Richard Branson? They've probably got glowing reviews on him. They love him because they look after him so much. What do you want your legacy to be? When you're lying on your deathbed, many decades from now, what difference do you want to have made? What difference do you want to see in the world? And how do you want those people that have worked with you along the way and your team, how do you want them to remember you? All right, write those answers down in your book, post them in the Facebook group. We've got a really great task to follow this. So in the interim, jump down into the task below and we'll get into it and really start to develop this a little bit further. I'll see you in the video below. Keep choosing awesome in the interim and inspiring those around you.